I'd love to chat to property data, but I guess how do you kind of break it down because we got I'm in the industry. I look at property data every single day, and I think you can go too deep with it, and it gets really confusing for people. Like, how do you unpack property data and these capital growth things, and in an easy to consume way for people to understand?
Yeah, there are many different perspectives on this problem. There are many different theories. So it's all kinds of experts. They emphasize different things. So for me, the big thing is, what is backtestable? So what can I prove? So how can I run this as a model, as like pretending that you had an agent that was back in time? By agent, I mean like someone who is independent, who can buy and sell, not a real estate agent. And so can I send my models back in time and know nothing about the future and not be tuned for the future and make money? So that's my primary focus is so applying things like I've done work on other time series, forecasting NFTs, and a lot of common principles with that. So it's all time series, and when you do the back testing, it's a lot harder. So it's a lot easier to look back over a period and just say, then look and then find the patterns, but then to actually only know what's true for a certain period of time and then to project forward is a much bigger challenge, and I love to welcome that challenge. So I like to look at things primarily through the guise of the future and predicting the future. That's the hard thing to do, but also we're at Microburbs, we are here to serve others. So obviously humans have a lot of knowledge as well, and experts such as yourselves can provide a whole lot of expertise. So we also provide all kinds of indicators that can lead to capital growth and livability for our customers.
I guess I'd like to talk to how I think about and have used Microburbs myself as a property investor. I particularly look at it from, I guess this is what data does, right? Data takes all of the information and boils it down to a bit of a score, a bit of a number. And I go to a location first in Microburbs before I fly out there. And I build a list of assumptions of what I think this area is going to look like based on the data that you have on the platform and various other sources, like going through Google Maps and going, like, zooming through the streets, having conversations with property managers. All of these things you should probably be doing as a property investor if you're going to go out there and do it yourself. I use Microburbs to build that assumption, say where is the housing commission pockets? What does that look like? Because if there's 50 houses right there that are housing commission, that's probably not going to say actually I'll come back to asking a question about housing commission and capital growth and prices increases, but I imagine that it doesn't correlate so much and you might not get the best tenants. So it's only then do I fly down to that location once I've made my assumptions, and then I try and prove or disprove my assumptions based on, empirically going there and actually doing it. So it's a great first starter for any property investor that wants to understand an area, to see where are the schools, where are the families hanging out, where is the most amount of crime going on.
How much income are they on as well?
Yep, 100%.
What I think are the key things that you have proven that impact property prices?
So I remember Lifestyle Score back when we did that back in 2016. That was a predictor. We see, so there's definitely the price relative to other places nearby. So that's a really big one.
So like the ripple effect, is that sort of?
Kind of, yeah. So you've got ripple effect. You've got like the timing of the market. You've got the balancing of price to neighbors. So all of these things come in. So that is, I think, it's a particularly good use of machine learning to do pricing. So as a human, you can come into a place and say, I think this is worth more than what it is now, but like, how do you actually arrive at a figure? So for example, in politics, coming back to the disadvantaged, right? So it's like, some people think there should be more welfare payments. Some people think there should be less, but very few people can put a figure to exactly how much it's going to be forever, right? It's just like more or less. Whereas a computer can actually like nail a price. So it can look at a whole lot of things and go, for this time right now, this particular market is overpriced or underpriced. And it's not just a vibe. It's got like an empirical means of arriving at a particular price, and it'll make a prediction that it will hit that price. So as you get lots of different indicators going on, as it gets more complicated, the machines get better at having an input as to where that price should be.
What is livability? Like, how can I how do I understand livability, what it means, and how I can utilize it as a property investor?
So livability, how good life is. So it is, do people have a pleasant life? And there's obviously different kinds of people will want different kinds of things. So you're young, trendy people. I was once young but never trendy, but I still make models for this. So the stimulation, vibe, the ability to meet new and interesting people, to be up on the latest trends. So that's one element of livability. So you might have heard of the walk score that kind of correlates to hip score, but we go beyond walking to all the stuff. And then your lifestyle people, I'll just describe the kind of market behind it. So lifestyle might be more your mainstream person. So maybe like myself when I was young, not as hip, but I still lived in kind of hip suburbs. I was a bit of an interlooper. But you just want what other people want. Go for lifestyle, mainstream, middle class kind of thing. And affluence score I didn't mention. Affluent, don't forget affluence. So a lot of people want to live in a place that has great wealth or status associated with it. Either it's just because that's the kind of person they are and they want to be amongst the same kind of people, or perhaps they aspire to greater wealth and status and see great benefit in that. Where income and income and life quality do correlate. It's not a perfect correlation. There are other things that correlate better, but it is actually quite a good thing. I will mention actually, so one really powerful thing for why you should buy in a good area is that your kids will do better. So there was this is a very exhaustive study that was done. So what they did was they looked at, the problem is if you try and do this analysis, you look at people who move, maybe people who move, they already had something, they're different to the people who just stayed where they were, right? They might be more aspirational, they might have different personalities, right? So they got around this by, they looked at siblings, and they made the assumption that the younger sibling who spends more time in the new place, what's the difference between how their life ends up? So imagine at an extreme case, you've got a 2-year-old and an 18-year-old, 16 years difference, and you decide to move to the other side of the tracks, a better life. So then you compare the life outcomes of the 2-year-old and the 18-year-old, and what they found was that moving to the nicer area really helped that younger kid. So having role models around, I think, was a particularly strong thing that they talked about.
What are your thoughts on how vital data is versus actually getting to a location and checking things out?
I think both are important. So data isn't at a point where it knows exactly how the house looks, that there are things that are going to be missed. dare I say, sometimes they don't go to total effort to show all the bad things of a property. Just being controversial here. But yeah, so you might have to find that out for yourself. I remember there was a case of there's a property, I think it was in Strathfield, where there was a massive water tower behind the house, and they just photoshopped out the water tower. So it was just a very brazen example of that. So yes, they I think that there's definitely a place for it, particularly on the individual, less so on the area selection, I think, but particularly on the property side of things. But still, there's value in both. So obviously, there are different kinds of analysts. So there are other real estate analysts that are much more, so they work in spreadsheets, and they'll deal in more broad aggregates, like for larger regions, and they will have a mental picture of each of those. And yeah, I mean, as long as they can prove it, so as long as they can show that they better than the national average, then whoever can, in my view, whoever can prove it, that's the people to listen to.
What are some of the things that I should be thinking about? I'm a first-time investor. Like when I'm looking, when I'm looking at a new place to consider, are there what do they look like? Are there things, or is it just there's so much data that there's no way to pinpoint a few factors?
What might outperform?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I gave a bit of the rosy stuff, but I would say to them, know your biases. So just because you drive out to somewhere and you fall in love with a place and you say, oh, this is just like what we had on that holiday. You remember that with the kids? And it was a glorious time. And the way they set up this cafe is just so similar. I can see this town becoming just like Bowral in a few years.
Yeah, this is the Byron of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would be skeptical of, like, you don't have, I'm sorry to say, no human being has that much experience, particularly if you're a new buyer. So there's a whole lot of humans are very quick to find patterns in things and have opinions, particularly things like politics and major life decisions. People they're very confident relative to how much they know. So we've evolved as we have to make split-second decisions so that we don't get eaten by a tiger. Yeah. So, or that person's dodgy, that he might chop me up. So that's how our AI has been, our neural net has been created. So be aware that just that is not really enough. And people also have a bias towards their own area. So you can think, you ask someone, where's the best place to invest? And they'll say, oh, around here, obviously. And I'm surrounded by people who also think that. So they've all chosen that. So the Northern Beaches is the place. So the Northern Beaches is filled with people who want to go to the beach. Yeah. And that is, and everyone agrees. So obviously, like, you're not talking to anybody else. So be aware that people are growing. What drives these markets in a dynamic economy like Australia with very high levels of immigration. It's a complex society as well. So on the one hand, real estate is really good in that it feels very, it's much more tangible than owning stock, but it can be misleading as well. So it might not be quite as tangible as you think, because things are supply and demand. I've been hiring a lot, and I've been surprised to find out that I only hire people, I only get an interview if they've got distinction average for their university. And even then, like, I've got a guy who's like way off the 99.95. But
is that
I
is,
even
is,
that among what's
is,
that?
is choosing that type of person more of your own bias, or is that a statistically reliable metric to choose
Yeah,
your
that
people?
is a challenge in hiring, right? So if you're at Google, then you have enough, so they can do analyses,
You do what they
right? But
want,
in a
yeah.
startup, you have to rely on these instincts, and you just go, yeah, that kind of person. You have to be able, and I think entrepreneurs are actually on average more likely to overrepresent, so they're more likely to find patterns too early. So it's a bias that I have to be aware of as well. And obviously, there are many different ways. But anyway, what I was saying about I've been interviewing these very smart people who want to work on a public data site. It's easy to attract people when you've got a site like Microburbs, but unless they study economics, well, I asked them this question. So imagine there is a whole lot of new in a metropolis, a whole lot of new houses are put into an area and nothing else. What happens to prices? And almost everyone says prices go up.
But that's not to be the case, is it?
Yeah, that's not the case. So and these are the smartest people, right? So how much economic understanding is out there? So you guys going out there and providing this kind of education, I think, is really valuable. Like if people don't know supply and demand, how do you know like when one market's going to go up and another one's going to go down, right? You need experts.